say the building is not designed to take care of the mentally ill.
I get a little frustrated because I feel like we're kind of the dumping ground at times.
Undersheriff Jerry Hatcher has seen the jail take on a new role as the default mental health care provider.
It's frustrating that we don't have all the funding and the resources. It just gets cut off the main come in jail, so we transfer all those costs to the taxpayers of Benton County.
With the mental illness population on the rise, they're running out of places for these individuals to go.
They don't have the beds in the hospitals.
Rocky Hensley suffers from bipolar disorder. Like many chronically mentally ill individuals, he received charges for a minor offense, and instead of being sent to a psychiatric hospital, Hensley went to jail.
It's a system that sets you up to fail.
Hensley describes what he calls a broken process of court orders and legal fees. He says most mentally ill individuals have no means of paying, forcing many to sit out their sentences, only getting worse in jail and costing taxpayers more money. Undersheriff Hatcher explains that years ago, they used to be able to send mentally ill inmates to psychiatric hospitals like Eastern State within days.
They're overworked, full.
Meaning corrections officers were newly responsible for treating these mentally ill inmates. And in 2014, Hensley feels he was mistreated in jail. He says after being booked during a manic episode, he was mistaken for being on meth.
And so what they did was they tied me down to a chair. They shackled and handcuffed me to a chair and put a bag over my head. And the shackles and handcuffs were so tight that my extremities turned blue and swelled.
Undersheriff Hatcher explains jails are responsible for housing a complex mix of inmates, and he says it's difficult to tell if someone is detoxing or suffering a mental health crisis. So until the inmate calms down, he says they have to use this chair with straps and bindings for safety.
And people look on the outside, as a safety chair, and it's like, oh my gosh, is that barbaric? They're strapped in a chair. But that's designed because they will literally split their heads open, by hitting a sink, or running into a wall, or they'll assault somebody.
Hensley says he knows he was hard to handle, but as a mentally disabled person, he feels his rights were violated.
It was the exact opposite of the kind of experience somebody in my condition needed, and it really damaged me.
Undersheriff Hatcher admits there are holes in the system, but he says they've come a long way in recent years. They've drawn up plans to build a separate mental health wing, which will be an extension of the jail with 25 beds and a more therapeutic environment. They've brought in a team of mental health professionals trained to deal with these issues, and corrections staff now receives mental health training. Hatcher stresses the need for the community partners to work together in order to stabilize the mentally ill inmates.
And if they're not, they're just going to wind up back here, face additional charges, and all that has a cumulative effect on the community.
From a cost standpoint, whether they're in jail or using court times, he says the bill falls on the taxpayers.
It behooves all of us to work together as a community to support and try to keep these people from coming into the criminal justice system.
Hatcher and Hensley would both like to see a judicial system and a community that sets up the mentally ill for a life of better choices instead of a life behind bars. In Benton County, Elise Haas, Action News. Mental health professionals and officers say their goal is to offer individuals the access to mental health services to provide safety to these inmates as well as the community. Benton County hopes to break ground on the new mental health wing this year. If you're interested in learning more,